These are the images that immortalized May 4th, 1970 in the minds of Americans past, present, and future. 13 infamous seconds on the fields of Kent State University would become the symbol of everything America viewed as wrong with the war in Vietnam. In these 13 seconds, 61 shots were fired, 4 people lay dead, and 9 others were wounded. Why just Kent State? Why, when another university, just an hour drive north, was protesting the same war with the same enthusiasm? This university was Case Western Reserve. It was not overtaken by the National Guard on May 4th, 1970. The days and weeks leading up to the massacre at Kent State University were filled with intensifying protests against the war. This protesting led to rioting that spilled across the campus. These events soon caught the eye of Governor Rhodes, who had just promised to stop the protests against the war in government by any means necessary. He followed through with this promise by deploying the National Guard troops. Well, the rest, for Kent State, as they say, is history. And yes, I did run out of battery. And yes, I did learn not to film against the wind. This is where our story for Kent State stops and one for Case begins. In the streets, all across the field, imagine nothing but 4,000 students picketing against its government and its war. And this just hours after the tragedy occurred down at Kent State. The killing of 4 students at Kent State University was an act of assassination against American youth. That was a quote of Dr. Robert W. Morris, former president of Case Western Reserve University at the time the events occurred down at Kent State. As you can see, it's actually snowing very hard now. I'm sure it was much more pleasant on May 4th, 1970. But going back to the two universities today, May 4th, what really separated the two situations? Had the message that enough is enough been set clear enough to America's youth through the rifles of the guardsmen at Kent State? This theory is perhaps one reason why no troops were sent to Case that night. And yes, this man rode through my video, but that's alright. This poor camera. See, the interesting thing is that the violence at Kent State was only sparked after the National Guard troops had been sent. I mean, how about the 4,000 kids running around Cleveland? That should have been more than enough to get the attention of Governor Rhodes. You know, I believe both sides actually learned something from each other in those passing out. I mean, with the knowledge of how far each was willing to go, violence seemed inevitable. But why was it never again reached? Both sides had already reached a breaking point, and both of them had already broke. So, as I'm running out of battery again, Case would follow in the footsteps of their neighboring activists. History says it was not so, but for what reason it is not clear. No troops were deployed, no students silenced, no pedestal of infamy or day of remembrance, forgotten by history. Case's secret sharing of the atrocities that occurred on May 4th, 1970 would vanish with the night as the sun rose on May 4th. For the two universities on that historic day, one thing is for certain, while all others may remain hidden. That was the day the Vietnam War came home to America, made its bloody tracks into the heartland through American blood shed by American troops on American soil. And that was the day that the war began to end, even though it took 5 more years to die. And I'm wet and I'm cold.